Next speaker is Daniel Moore of the iRODS Consortium, and his talk is entitled Python iRODS Client version 3.1.1.
I realize it's me versus break time at 3 o'clock, so I'll try to get through this quickly. You'll notice there's a 0.1 increase relative to the agenda, so we've had a release of the Python iRODS client within the past 2 weeks. As Corey said, I'm Daniel Moore. I'm an applications engineer here at iRODS Consortium, and it's been the larger part of my work in the past some years to maintain and augment capabilities of PRC. By the way, the PRC is what we sometimes colloquially call it, Python RODS client, or PRC. Originally, the client library was developed at Cyverse. At that time, in 2013, when it came to light, it was developed by Cyverse, and they were the iPlant collaborative at the time. A little more than a year later, in 2014, we got it, and we took responsibility for it to further develop and maintain it, to keep up with the iRODS server's capabilities for the most part, and other maintenance. It is, of course, a legitimate package at the Internet Repository PyPI, and you can install it with the Python package installer, as probably most people who've used it already know. And so also we'd like to officially recognize that 51 people in total have contributed to the development and maintenance of the library over the years. So for the first, we'll start off with the very important updates to the client. We've had, of course, CTSNL from Utrecht has augmented it with an API endpoint for jQuery 2, which is the updated jQuery. I'll run through these pretty quickly. I think these are familiar to people, and they're mostly to do with the server. Replica truncate lets you target a particular data replica for truncation. Library features will expose, for example, whether you actually have a jQuery capability in the server you're connected to or not. Touch was developed by Corey, who introduced me, and is versatile and does a lot of development, certainly on our team. And it is an API which will update the modification time of a collection or data object. Client hints, I believe, will report for the connected server, the server connected to the client at the moment on the session, what rules, plugins, etc. are operative, among other information. Other enhancements we've done the past year are to get the client to automatically recognize that it's connected to a iRODS 4.3 server, when it's connected to one, and when it should use the new authentication framework and the associated plugins. We've implemented so far, of course, the native and PAN password ones. They're by far the most commonly used. And I understand that PAM Interactive is on its way. I'm not doing that work myself. We also have introduced some capability for duplicating what init does from the I commands, and that is to, at least some of it, that is to create the iRODS authentication file in the client environment. We've also introduced the ability to interface from the library to some popular progress bar libraries, and with it also generalized the ability of the get and put methods for data objects to update any object interested in subscribing to how many bytes have thus far been transferred in a parallel transfer, for example. Okay, more enhancements that we've done. This sort of fell out of the automatic detection of which code path should be taken on authentication. So now you can actually call a server version without an authentication method on a session object to find out, without first authenticating, what version you're connected to of iRODS. Also, you can, for the range of a certain set of lines of code, you can also change which XML parser is active. That's the part of the PRC that processes messages coming back from the server. If you have names that have embedded weird characters in them, like say, bells or \1, sometimes this is important. Also, we've had the entire source code base of PRC reformatted using the black formatter. We have dropped Python to as of version 3.0. That speeds us up, I would say, rather when we're doing work, as we no longer have to consider those old versions. And I don't think anyone deliberately is using Python 2 anymore. Bug fixes include resource redirect was found to be sometimes more of a problem than it was worth, and it was at one point enabled by default. It no longer is. The problem was that it doesn't sometimes deal well with host names as reported by the server connection. Put and create, you can now opt into a behavior where it will respect force flags and force options. This avoids overwriting data objects when you didn't mean to, or as the case may be, truncating them. There were also some columns in the jQuery 1 interface that were not correctly mapped, and that's been corrected along with some test hooks put in to make sure that things stay that way, stay correct. We can also, for a long time, we've had a configurable client using a file that you can direct the PRC to look at to load settings. Now you can do all of that in the OS environment without necessarily depending on a file. Session clone had a small bug in which it would actually clear out a mapping that the original object being cloned had, and we don't do that. I don't think it had terrible ramifications, but probably more ramifications to efficiency of the client. Now the library no longer calls a setup function for logging. That's really the place of the application to do. And we also have a quieter exit to the Python interpreter when it's tearing down objects at the end. All right, how much time? Do we have time for a little code explication, or is this optional? Quickly? Okay. This is just to illustrate a couple of the new devices we put in. This is authenticating without to the server. Sorry, this is getting a server version without first authenticating on the top, and at the bottom, this is temporarily for a range of lines of code, changing your choice of XML parsers. Quasi XML. You'll see on line 6, it's quasi XML we're using, and we may be doing that to protect against strange characters occurring in our collection or data object names. And finally, here is an example of how to use jQuery 2, the newer general query capability from the PRC. In the near future, we expect to completely 100% be interoperable with iRODS 5. I believe we have one of our interns this summer is working on PAM interactive authentication using the new auth flow, and we're also going to probably add automatic GitHub actions for testing any new commits integrated to the code base. And with that, I'm ready for any questions.
All right.
Hope I'm ready.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Any questions from the room?
That might be a good sign.
All right, well, thanks, Dan.